All right, so what is the next phase of SelectServer sunsetting? I think the important date to keep in mind is April 30th. We have shifted that date a couple of times, and I believe the last date we publicized was the 23rd. We've shifted that back to the 30th to give a little more time for these configurations to be done. On that date, on April 30th, all SelectServer traffic is going to be directed to the Subscription Entitlement Service, the SES service. All SelectServer activations will continue to work through SES. There's no need to reconfigure any end user machines. All of the activation keys that you have configured in SelectServer have been migrated over, and those will continue to activate the products that they were able to activate before. However, to keep some of the restrictions in place that you might have configured within SelectServer, there's some manual configuration that you might have to go through, and that's what we're going to cover here today. Also on that date, the SelectServer Administrator UI, that's the selectserver.bentley.com user interface, will go away, and you'll be redirected to Entitlement Management, which is the SES user interface for license administration. That in that Entitlement Management, you'll find controls to do all of the same activities that you were able to do in SelectServer in terms of creating keys, temporary keys and custom activation group keys, and creating restrictions. Great. So for activations of SelectServer licensed products through SES, I've mentioned that all the activation keys have been migrated, all the active activation keys, so activation keys that have been disabled in SelectServer or expired were not migrated over, as they aren't being used by SelectServer even. Those activation keys are within SES associated to an entitlement country. That entitlement country that an activation key is associated to is based on the contract that the site itself came from. All sites within SelectServer have been rolled up into an entitlement country, and that includes all of the products that were within that site. So you will find that while you might have had several different sites with different lists of products, if they roll up under the same country, those lists have been collated together within SES. The activations for activation keys will be based on the access controls that have been configured within Entitlement Management for the entitlement country that the key is mapped to. So if you have disabled access for one of our products, MicroStation, for example, and someone tries to activate MicroStation using an activation key, that will fail. So those access controls within SES will be honored. The activation can also be provided through an entitlement group that the activation key has been mapped to. We will cover that in just a couple minutes, and I'll demonstrate how to do that mapping. If the activation key is associated to an entitlement group, that will override any access control in the entitlement country. So you can disable access for most people, but leave it open for a particular key. That will be possible. So the actions required are only for any site that you have within SelectServer configured restrictions. And these would include product restrictions on a custom activation group or a temporary key, and includes checkout restrictions, right? So if you don't have either of those configured, what you're going to see later does not really pertain to you today. There would be no required activities for you today. But if you have any of these, you'll find these helpful. The configurations that you're setting up before the switch date aren't going to be put into effect until the switch date happens. So until all of the SELECTserver traffic gets redirected to SES. So what you're doing with these activities is preparing for that date, just so it's clear. Right. I'd also like to point out that if you don't do these activities, even if you have product restrictions set up or checkout restrictions configured, if you don't do these, your end users will still be able to activate. The only risk is that your users with those activation keys may be able to activate more products than they were able to before. Now that it's sometimes acceptable, and other time for other organizations it's not acceptable. So the risk is that you might incur extra usage that may in turn incur extra costs.
If you found this video helpful, please give it a like. If you want to see more such series, consider subscribing to our channel. Thank you, and see you next time.